With every new week, I tend to always ask myself, is our money safe in banks? Well, we've done videos on what we're doing with our cash for the week. What are we doing? How much are we keeping in banks? We've done videos on that. But let's talk today about the banking system and how, should we trust it or not? Is it safe or not? And I've had people say, we can't keep, hundreds of thousands of dollars in your home. I get that, I understand. What are some questionable things that we should be watching for when it comes to our banking? And then also, what can we do with our cash? I mean, should we be worried about it in the bank? Is it safe? I think there's a lot more at play. It may come to regulation, may come to the financial institutions, may come to the stock market, may be coming to an agenda. So let's jump into it today. Again, talking money, but trying to find the best way to take care of our money. We've worked hard for it, and we don't want it just to go away or to be controlled. It's going to be a good video today, guys, and it starts right now. Hey guys, welcome to the Max. Thank you so much for being here. It is still a cool morning here in Mississippi. South Mississippi does not typically see cool mornings this time of year. Usually it's pretty much 85 right when you wake up. So it's been a little unique. It's actually stunted our gardens just a tad, but everything's still growing. God's blessing. We had a great rain just a day or so ago. So it's really good to see the provisions that God's given us, and you hear the birds chirping. It's a gorgeous morning. So thank you for being here today. If you're new to the channel, go down here, press subscribe, ring the bell, give us a thumbs up or down, but let us know what you think about this video. Your thumbs up and your commenting helps us stay in the algorithm, and hopefully we can be relevant and have wise information for other people to listen to. So let's jump into the content for the day. So lately we've seen stock market issues, the volatility. Now it's going crazy up, then it goes crazy down. We see banks failing, we see bank runs, we see FDIC covering more than it's supposed to. Then we see our Treasury Secretary saying we may not cover up to that with other banks. So that means a lot of volatility actually comes to the market. We see the issues with the dollar. And for you and me who work tirelessly to take care of our families, to earn a living, to sometimes work paycheck to paycheck, but ultimately we have to live, so we're trying to do all we can to make money. How do we know our money is safe? We've talked before in other videos. Yes, we should be diversifying. Yes, we should be buying precious metals to an extent. Yes, we should be buying self-defense tools and antiquities and real estate and things that we can diversify our money into that are more inflation-proof and not touched by regulation. Now, some of that is definitely touched by regulation, but if we diversify ourselves enough, they're not worried about, my 1968 Ford F600 dump truck that I use on my farm. It's an asset to me. Now, does it use gas? It's a gas guzzler, absolutely. But we're trying to make provisions for cash to be utilized to be an asset. So we have a farm truck. We have several other antiquity trucks. We have several other things that we're needing on the farm. We just built a new building to store hay. So we're utilizing cash. Well, you have to do the same thing for you as the individual, you as the consumer. If you're worried about your cash being safe, then learn to buy things that are holding value. Now, I would not tell you to go buy a brand new vehicle because they're going to depreciate, and that's going to hurt you worse than sometimes inflation will. But I am saying be smart with what you're buying. Self-defense tools and also precious metals, maybe a business or real estate. So those things we've already talked about in prior videos. We're not going to rehash that now. So diversifying cash and putting it in real tangible assets is key. Now let's jump into the money situation, the dollar situation, and the banking situation really more in this video. So now to the nut and bolts. We saw another bank fail this last week, and actually it didn't fail to a point where the government took it over or backed everything, the FDIC. That's what happened in some of the other banks. It's just as scary. We see a bank that was struggling and it's picked up. Now, in most cases, we would say, that's great. That's great that another bank come alongside them and basically made the bank thrive again. Took care of the bank and ultimately is going to assume everything the bank has. The two things, I'm glad people's money is safe, definitely, because they've worked hard just like we have. But the problem, I think, is we're seeing a move towards bigger national banks. we're seeing these smaller banks and regional banks struggle a little bit more. They may have been promised to that they would be okay and that the economy's okay, so then they make these bad loans, they do fractional lending, they do all these things that the government wants them to do. We saw the treasury stocks, they buy into these treasury stocks, all of a sudden the interest rates goes up, things change. I think they've bought into the government watching over them. So therefore now these banks are struggling because the government or Fed has changed plans. And it tends to hurt these smaller banks, hurt these regional banks, ones that were already in a volatility, one who may have had bad business practices that may have not been for the best, they may have done bad lending, we don't know. But the scary thing is that these big monster banks, the ones that I always say try to get away from, is starting to buy in and purchase these banks. Well, let's go back to the agenda that we always talk about. We see the globalist push to where all business is transacted with the Fed or with these bigger banks. It makes it more centralized. Well, that's a scary thing to me. So for most people like us that work really hard, we're kind of skeptical of banks anyway, to then turn around and see the local and little banks struggling to then be bought out by the biggest banks. The bigger banks may not have our best interests at heart. Who are the bigger banks really kowtowing to? Who are they trying to serve? Who are they doing the work for? Who do they want to see thrive? Your small little town thrive? Probably not. They probably don't even know who you are or what little town they're in because they own so much. So with this bank failure, this makes me think, okay, what should we do with our money? Should we invest in credit unions? Should we still stay in local banks because local banks tend to be the ones that are struggling, or the regional banks because they're struggling? Should we invest all our money in national banks because they're safe, they're too big to fail, quote unquote, too big to fail? So what should we do with our money? Not going back to this discussion of diversified money. We're going to talk about just the money in the banks. Should we trust the banks? So again, me personally, I can't advise you. I'm just telling you what I'm doing. I see local federal credit unions and I see local banks that are owned in these little communities still being where I want to trust and put my money. Now, I'm not putting all my money, but there is a place where I think that our cash cannot just be on us at all times. We've talked about this. You can't carry cash and gold around everywhere you go, and you can't just leave it all in your home if all of a sudden something happens to your home. Theft or fire, all that plays into it. It's your livelihood. Then at that point, how can we trust these banks? Well, I want to know the people that are at the bank. I believe that those people have a little bit more heart and soul in their community, and I believe they would be more honest. Now, does that mean everybody's not a crook? That means everybody's honest and doing the right things? Probably not. But I do believe we would hear about things that are going bad in our community way before we would hear what's going wrong in another state or on the national level that would affect us more. So personally, I believe in the local and smaller banks. Here's another reason. Let's talk government and agendas. We see Jamie Dimon, which is the JP Morgan Chase, and we've talked about this in another video, is that he was talking about the solar and wind farms and how we should use eminent domain and seize private lands to push those initiatives. We see also this gentleman who's tied up in some Epstein deals, and that's kind of fishy. So we don't know who the big players are at these monster national banks. However, we see the government is backing and helping these monster national banks more than ever the last 20 years. We also see they're the ones making plays at these smaller banks. We also see that they're the ones involved in the Fed more than anyone else. We also see them supporting a lot of these agendas, such as the CBDC. So when I say let's do local business, or I say let's stay away from the bigger banks, it's because they may have a different interest at heart versus some of the interest of local banks and local federal credit unions. Now, our goal in business and our goal to live is to make money. I understand these local banks have to make money. I understand they still have to do lending. Also, I believe the banking system needs to be fixed. I believe there's a lot of issues with it wholeheartedly. I believe it's too centralized, and I believe that it's too tied to debts, and that's causing a lot of our issues for a lot of banks. Also, I believe that we can know that if we had to get to our money and our funds, again, this bank is local and it's here, we would have heard already if this bank was struggling. unless you just know these banks and you're in these stories, you don't know that Silicon Valley Bank is struggling. You didn't know that First Republic Bank was struggling. So if you had a local branch there, you may have not known that it was having issues, and all of a sudden you look out and there's a new name on the sign. Well, did you know anything about that? I don't know. And does it bother you? I don't know. I'm just saying, when it comes down to it, is your money safe in the national banks, and do they care about you as the consumer? I don't believe they're looking for your interest at heart. They may be looking at a bigger agenda. So bigger banks involved in agendas. Bigger banks involved more with the Fed and with the government, and having this too big to fail mentality. Also, bigger banks buying littler banks to centralize more of our dollars in these locations. That's dangerous. We've seen this with BlackRock with businesses. We see this with our local towns. These local mom and pop hardware stores, these local mom and pop grocery stores go out of business when these big businesses come in. Nothing against Home Depot, nothing against Walmart, nothing like that. I'm just saying, when we centralize and we go everything national, all our support and all our money goes to these national companies, then I believe we're losing out on the fact of our local communities. We're losing out on the fact of our local economies. Our local economies, our counties, our cities, our states, we really need to be more involved there, because they're the ones that's going to impact us more than the national side. So our dollars need to be spent local. Our dollars need to be invested local, and we need to make sure that we can trust the people who are holding our dollars. Just the other day, Bernie Sanders came out and said he supports, taxing and taking and seizing money over a certain limit. That is crazy. Now, is he saying that? Are the Democrats or the liberals or these agenda pushers saying the most extreme things so then they can, push it to a certain extent? I don't know. But if I work hard for my money, no matter if it's $1 or $1 billion, it's nothing to the government or these bigger banks to say where I can or can't use my money, or how much money I can or can't have. We saw also the last few years, because of political affiliations, because of maybe the way someone thinks and the freedoms and liberties of speech, that some of these bigger banks have said, we don't want your money anymore. We saw this with MXM News, that a big bank said, you know what, I don't want your money anymore, you go find another place to do business. And it was just all because of political speech or free speech and their thought pattern on certain issues. So if we spend all our money with big business, we put all our money in these big banks, then they control more of what's going to happen. We see this with a lot of businesses too, backing certain policies, and then the conservatives are trying to boycott, or the conservatives saying we're not going to buy from them. Well, if all our money has been invested with these companies and all our money has been invested in these banks, then we may not have the strength to do anything about it. We may not have the boycott power. We may not have the leadership to push against those things. Think of Congress. How many congressmen are, lobbied and supported by these big monster banks? Just a thought. I think we're seeing more of a centralized push on this global agenda, and the banks are a big part of that. So is the banking system broke? Yes. Can we have money in the bank? Absolutely. Do I believe we need to take every penny out of the bank? No. But I do believe we need to stay as local as possible, so that way you can at least have access to whatever funds you're leaving in the bank. Now again, we're not talking about all your funds, because that's not what I would advise, and that's not what I'm personally doing. But I'm personally putting the money that we do have and the money that we are going to put in the banks, they're going to be local. They're going to be invested in these communities versus the ones that are worried about growing these banks to state level or national level. I want someone to want to make money. I want someone to want to thrive in their community, but I don't want their aspirations to be the next political senator, or their political aspirations just to be sold nationally to a big bank. Those things scare me, so I have to be very wary of who we bank with and where we put our monies. And the last point, and I think this is the one that I really want to hone in on, and I hope that you will pay attention to. You see that the economy is bad. No matter what the definition of recession is, no matter what the definition of a good economy or strong economy or jobs are, you see it locally with buying groceries, you see it locally buying gas, you see the volatility in your money. I imagine you have less money now than you did in the prior years. So if that is the case, that shows that our economy is struggling and we need to fix it. Now here's the problem, I think, with the banking sector and our politicians that are so involved. The big national banks and the government agencies that's pushing our dollar and the debts and spending money like crazy, we're seeing that those entities and these big businesses are still saying the economy is so strong and your dollar is safe and all these banks are so secure. Our financial system is secure. Well, again, locally, how are you feeling with your eggs costing more, your milk costing more, living paycheck to paycheck? Maybe jobs shutting down around you. We've seen department stores close down. We see retailers close down. We see local businesses close down. But all the while, our national policy and our national government and these national banks are saying, no, we're safe. This is just a little flub. This is not anything to worry about. We're in complete control and it's gonna be okay. But then we hear news about the dollar. We hear BRICS. We see local banks shutting down. We see First Republic banks, places like that. Are we being lied to? Are we being fed propaganda? And all the while, they're doing all these things behind your back. There was a congressman, I'm not gonna say who, just do your research, that they took a lot of money out of some of these struggling banks before they started closing and their shares started going down. Well, how did they know that? And they reinvested in these bigger banks. How did they know that? Because it's tied too tight to the government. But say, for instance, they're telling you it's all good because they want you to leave your money there because they don't want to see bank runs, and all the while, it's not as good as they're saying it is. Do we really trust everything that we hear? I'd like, for instance, when you listen to me, I don't want you just to believe what I say. I want you to do your research because I want you to understand that I'm not trying to tell you anything. I'm just telling you what I'm personally doing with my money, or what I'm personally doing with my stock, or what I'm personally doing with my prepping and my animals. I just want to tell you what we're doing, and hopefully that'll help you make some wise decisions for yourself. But ultimately, you need to do your own research. If you've got money in JP Morgan Chase and you love it, great, have at it. I personally don't want that type. If you have money in Bank of America or Wells Fargo or some of these monster banks, Citi, so be it, that's okay. I just think that that's a bad move because ultimately I believe a lot of those are too involved in the Fed, too involved in the government, and not looking out for our best interest. I would go back and say, you know what? First of all, I'm gonna use my money wisely and buy assets and have things that I could use to barter: food, gold, assets, real estate. But when it comes down to it and I have to keep some money in the bank, I'm gonna stay local and I'm gonna stay with my community because I don't believe they're gonna lie to me. They see what I live in. They see my local community. They see the struggles with the local store going out of business. They see it, so therefore they're gonna make sure that they're doing all they can to stay in business too. I don't know if JP Morgan or Regions or Wells Fargo or Bank of America really care what happens in South Mississippi in my local town. So therefore my money doesn't seem like it's doing too much over there. Can we trust our money in the banks? I really don't know. But I do believe that if we diversify our money, play our cards right, support local businesses and support the local economy by investing our money into these local banks and these local federal credit unions, I do believe we have a better chance of our dollars being safe. Another pushback I've heard, because those banks are too big to fail, why would we want to stay in those national banks? Because that means our money would always be safe. I understand that point, because the governments are not going to let those, they're not going to let those fail. For one thing, they're all tied to the Fed, so it's not going to fail. Is our dollar going to fall to pieces? Probably not right now. But we're seeing maneuvering towards centralized currency through CBDC, or the fact that these banks are getting so big and they're buying out all their competition and all these local banks, these community banks, these regional banks. So wrapping up, being honest, I don't believe the Republicans or Democrats are actually looking out for us as much. I believe they've been lobbied and bought out by these big companies and big banks. And they all are looking at agendas that are not good for the local consumer and the local people and the populace. I really believe that. So therefore, here's what, again, my plan is. But I'm gonna keep some cash. I'm gonna keep some in precious metals. I'm gonna keep some in self-defense. I'm gonna have a lot invested in my food and stockpile and prepping needs that I need to take care of my family. I'm gonna look at assets. I'm gonna try to find good deals on antiquities and on things that can bring value later. I'm gonna find options that are good for bartering. And ultimately, I'm gonna pray for wisdom daily. I'm gonna seek Christ in all my decisions, because this is not about religion. This is about being good stewards with what God has given us. So if we can be smarter, if we can tithe, if we can budget, if we can find ways to spend our money more wisely, put our money in safer places or in places that's going to benefit us as a family more than just sitting in a bank or sitting in a national bank, I think we need to be doing that. After we've done all that and we start building up preps and we start finding ways to take care of our family, then we have to depend on banks. Then again, find a local bank, find a local federal credit union, find a place that your money is safe, that they know you by name, and that they want to see their community thrive. I think that is what we need to be looking for, is places that are local, that want to see their local area thrive because they live in the same community. They don't want to see businesses fail. They don't want to see their bank fail. They want to make money too. So is your money safe in banks? We don't know that. It's a little bit bigger question than that because I believe our whole economy is in dire straits, and I do believe it's too centralized and there needs to be a lot of banking fixes. Do I think that the national banks and Congress can do that? They should be, but I don't think they're gonna fix it. I believe we're gonna see it fail over time. So again, local is always better because then therefore if you need to get something out or you see an issue locally, you can grab your funds and get out of there. Start prepping. Start finding ways to put your money up in other things, in real tangible goods, that if worse comes to worse, you have it. If we see a crap hits the fan situation, you've prepared. Be wise, make wise decisions, pray daily to find out what's best for you and your money and your family, because ultimately you are the one that's responsible to take care of the situation at hand. You're the one that's worked hard for your funds. Don't trust it with just anybody. Make sure you are being a good steward with it. Guys, thank you so much for watching. We hope this helps. My goal for this video is just to say, you know what? Don't trust everybody. Make wise decisions in finding what's best for you. There's agendas out there, and sometimes those agendas do not look out for the populace or for the local man, the local consumer, the person who's working and trying to just do their job and love their family. Yes, we're centralized. Yes, a lot of that matters, but it really comes down to, can you protect your home? Can you live in the town that you're in? Can you get the goods that you need, and can you get your money and get your assets here back at your property? And the best place to do that is supporting local. That's just my opinion, so take it as you will. But most of all, start doing some research on what some of these politicians are saying about these banks. Do your research on what these big centralized banks are saying and what they believe and their pushes for a globalist style money system. Guys, thank you so much for watching. We do hope that this video was help, but we also want to hear from you. Give me your thoughts on this content. Do you bank nationally? Do you bank local? Do you keep all your money in your mattress? Do you keep all your money in the banks? Do you believe in CDs? So tell me your thoughts, because that helps us as a community to be wise and make wiser decisions for our families. God bless. Happy homestead, y'all.